Getting back into Transformers Prime reviews, finally. Let's talk about the follow-up to what I found to be an exciting but pretty uneven episode that seemed to reward the character of Smokescreen for being just the worst. With the episode Alpha/Omega, an episode that, for whatever else it does, it really turns the status quo of the show on its head again, immediately after it was turned on its head last time. And it does so in a really interesting way, and there's some really cool visuals associated with it, but I have some real problems with how it's executed. If you recall at the end of the previous episode, Optimus Prime, after getting the Star Saber, receives a message from George Takei, or Alpha Trion. I couldn't really tell just from the voice. It's basically just a really fancy voicemail explaining that all of these relics that the two sides have been searching for were placed here intentionally because the Covenant of Primus foretold the war and that part of it would happen on Earth. Not in great detail, but in detail enough that Alpha Trion knew that Optimus would need help. It also, though, tells Optimus what the last 4 relics are. The Omega Keys, which, when brought together, have the power to restore life to Cybertron. They're effectively the Cyber Planet Keys from the old Transformers Cybertron cartoon. In fact, this seems to be exactly the same concept, just recycled for this continuity, which is pretty cool. Thankfully, none of these characters need Cyber Keys to activate their attack gimmicks in-universe. That was stupid then, and it would be stupid now too. So, realizing that, 1, they need these keys, all 4 of them, in order to do this, and also, they don't outright say it, but I would imagine, 2, that if Megatron realizes what the keys are, he could leverage the very future of Cybertron against the Autobots. They decide they absolutely have to get these last 4 relics, no matter the cost, and now that they have the Star Saber, it seems the chances are pretty good of them pulling this off, so Optimus gets to work immediately at decoding the last 4 relic locations. But meanwhile, the fact that Optimus has the Star Saber, which, remember, from last episode, channels the power of the Matrix itself into attacks, has inspired Megatron to do something absolutely batshit crazy. He takes the space bridge back to Cybertron, to a tomb holding one of the original primes, Liege Maximo, the evil prime, for lack of a better term, even prior to, the Fallen. I'm trying to remember my lore. If I'm not mistaken, Liege Maximo was, the second being that was ever created from Primus, or something like that. He's basically like the Transformers equivalent of an old god, or something. And Megatron walks right into his tomb, cuts off his right arm, and has it attached to his right elbow. He loses his big fusion cannon, but he gains the power to use prime weapons. Which, Optimus can do that because he has the Matrix, but this is literally Liege Maximo's arm. Just his arm would have comparable power in it to the Matrix. So he's able to use the Forge of Solus Prime, the big hammer from a while back, to forge his own Star Saber out of Dark Energon. And, this is super metal. It's so cool. It's a smart idea. Megatron was forced to actually think creatively and proved that he can, rather than just muscling his way through problems when he was faced with a problem that he literally couldn't muscle his way through, which is a cool moment for his character. But I also kind of hate this. Because when RC and Smokescreen go on a relic retrieval mission to find the first of the 4 Omega Keys, and they're faced with Megatron, turning the whole situation on its head, because it seems like they're setting up for another, message show journey episode, right? But instead, Megatron's there, and they have to fight him instead. Megatron is slinging around energy waves from his Dark Star Saber, that because he still has Liege Maximo's arm attached to his body, are comparable in strength to the energy waves that Optimus can make from the Matrix. And somehow, in spite of him doing this, in spite of him having this much power, RC and Smokescreen survive. Like, in the end, he lets RC go after he seemingly destroys Smokescreen after a brief exchange, so that she can give Optimus a message from him, that Optimus must come and retrieve the key himself. Megatron wants a one-on-one fight between his sword and Optimus's. But prior to that, an energy wave flies right at them and is seemingly stopped by they're in Egypt. There's like ruined chunks and stuff all over. It's seemingly stopped by some debris at their feet, which is ridiculous. This is an energy wave powerful enough to cut through a mountain. It should have cut right through that debris and sheared their legs off. Minimum. And then when Smokescreen is hit dead on, rather than just being split in half, he's knocked back into a pyramid, and because he stole the phase shifter again, he's pushed through the wall of the pyramid. He's knocked out by the impact, but he's pushed through the wall of the pyramid. And then the wall of the pyramid stops the blast. Even though when Megatron and Optimus fight in the same location later, Megatron splits one of the pyramids effortlessly with an identical blast. That blast should have carried through and killed Smokescreen. It absolutely should have killed him. RC and Smokescreen, based on the visual evidence in this episode, should be dead. And that's my main problem with this. They made the Star Saber so freaking powerful, and it's very, very cool. Don't get me wrong. It's an awesome weapon. But then they gave Megatron a weapon that's comparably powerful. And then when he and Optimus fight later, the much older Star Saber is broken by the newer Dark Star Saber, which is forged from Dark Energon, which is a more potent material. Megatron is now in the same position that Optimus was in last episode. And whereas Optimus, I think, should have pressed his advantage immediately and finished Megatron off, you could argue that maybe Optimus isn't so reckless a guy or so ruthless a guy, or both, that he would do that. Maybe it just goes against his character. I don't mean like his characterization, but like his character as a person, right? It's just not a thing he would do. But Megatron absolutely would. Like, after it turns out that Smokescreen's alive, and he uses the phase shifter to get himself and Optimus away and back to base, Megatron starts cackling because now he knows that he has the advantage and he doesn't have to worry. But I don't buy for a second that this version of Megatron, especially in an episode where he was just talking about how much he wants revenge for everything that the Autobots have put him and his people through this entire time, wouldn't take his new weapon to a major human city and start just slinging energy waves down into the crowd until Optimus comes out to face him again and can be finished off. Or like, we just had that episode recently about him trying to get a space laser, right? This is basically that. He could go stand on top of his ship and just sling energy waves down at anywhere on the planet that he wanted. Or plug the sword into the ship and use it as a space laser. They made the Star Saber, and by extension the Dark Saber, so powerful that I just don't buy that Megatron wouldn't have already won the war just by having it. And that's the main problem with the episode. Like, I understand that the point is that we're supposed to wonder how the Autobots can possibly recover from this disadvantage, but it's just too much of a disadvantage. It doesn't leave me wondering. It leaves me feeling like this situation should be literally hopeless. And if it's not, if the narrative doesn't treat it like that, then it shatters my suspension of disbelief, because that's just too unbelievable. And then there's the fact that even though the episode seems to be suggesting that Smokescreen has finally learned his lesson because he waited for the right time to swoop in with the phase shifter and save Optimus, and he made the right choice to retreat instead of engaging Megatron further, I still don't feel like the show has done the legwork to actually show me that that's the case. I'm hoping that there's some stuff in some upcoming episodes that I don't remember that'll convince me otherwise, but I don't feel like it's there yet. And yet I feel like the characters feel like it is, and that could be a problem going forward. I'm looking forward to finding out, though. I don't know if that's actually a problem yet. We're going to have to wait and see. It's not as if I hate this episode or something. It's still pretty fantastic. The Egyptian set, like they're at the pyramids, like the Sphinx and the pyramids, looked kind of PlayStation 2 graphics-y. It didn't look great, but the fight itself was really good. The choreography was neat, and the way that the energy waves were used to counter each other, and the fight itself was all pretty impressive. And I do like how this episode takes what we expected would happen and just flips it on its head. That was pretty cool. I just feel like they could have thought things through a little better here. They made the Starsaber so powerful that by extension the Dark Starsaber is too powerful, and they didn't have to do that. They got to pick how powerful the Starsaber was. It feels like a misstep. But as I alluded to a second ago, I don't remember the rest of this arc super well. And if nothing else, this episode did get me pretty hyped to see how the Autobots get out of this. So, end of the day, it did its job. Like, it did what it's supposed to do. It entertained me and it got me wanting to watch more. And I do know at least that they do reforge the Starsaber, because I do remember Optimus wielding it in his new body that he gets later. So, like, end of the day, this massive imbalance in power, this unrealistic imbalance of power, doesn't last forever, which maybe makes it fine. Also, just to nitpick for a second, I've got to ask, why are the keys that are capable of restoring life to Cybertron called Omega keys? Was it just so they could use this specific title for the episode? They just wanted to make an Alpha and Omega reference in the title, Alpha Trion being the Alpha? Because, guys, if you want an Omega, if you want something to be the Omega from your title, Megatron literally has a Starsaber now. I think that would count. You're fine. You don't have to name the keys like the Apocalypse keys, basically, when they're supposed to be the exact opposite of that. It's clunky. But that's not really a fault with the episode itself. It's just a thing that bugged me that I felt like pointing out to you guys. As per usual, though, I'd like to know what you guys think of the Transformers Prime episode Alpha/Omega, if you have seen it. Let's get a discussion going in the comments section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else you think would enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out the links to my various social medias, as well as to the many ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.